Hey everybody, welcome to McLean Church Online. My name is Chris Norris. Hey, it's so good to be with you today, whether you're listening on the radio, watching on YouTube, or joining during one of our live and interactive services on Sunday mornings at 9, 10, or 11. We're so glad you're here. And we understand that this is a busy time of year for so many of us. So we're glad that you're prioritizing church. And speaking of busy, yes, summer is coming to a close. So many people's schedules are going to get crazy again. And we want to remind you, as I was reminded, that the peace that we can experience can only be found in Christ alone. And I was reminded of this recently through our online YouVersion Bible app study that we do as a group here at McLean Church. And recently we've been talking about peace because I feel like it's a good time of year to be reminded of the peace that's fleeing us as summer leaves us as well, right? So many of us might spend the summer enjoying time with our family, enjoying some vacation, and then life gets crazy again and we forget about the peace. So let me read from you John 14:27. It says, I am leaving you with a gift, peace of mind and heart. And the peace I give is a gift the world cannot give. So don't be troubled or afraid. I was so encouraged by this because if you're like me, you look for peace maybe in all the wrong places. And this reminded me today that God provides a peace that the world cannot provide. And it's so easy for us to get sucked into all the other things and all the other places and all the other people we think can provide us peace, including ourselves. And it's really difficult to find that peace anywhere because we oftentimes fall short. But I'm grateful for the inexplicable peace that I can experience through Christ. Those moments where the world is kind of spinning out of control around me, my schedule's gotten away from me, my kids are driving me nuts, I'm so far behind on my work, but I still have a sense of peace. Now, this doesn't happen all the time, I'll be honest with you. But when it does, I ask myself, why am I so at peace with this? Why does everything seem calm? Even sometimes my friends will say, bro, how are you still holding it together? And truthfully, it's inexplicable peace, and it's only found in Christ. If I didn't have that connection with God, if I didn't have the opportunity to worship online with you, if I didn't have the opportunity to open the YouVersion Bible app each day, if I didn't have that reminder that Jesus gave his life for me, I wouldn't be able to find that peace, and I wouldn't experience it in any other way. And that's my only way I can explain it to my friends, and even myself, is that, man, when the Holy Spirit is present in our lives, we do experience a sense of peace that we can't find anywhere else. So my hope today for you and my encouragement for you today is don't forget that peace is accessible to you. When life gets crazy and you forget how you're ever going to regain that sense of peace in your life, return to the Father. He's waiting to provide you that peace that nobody and nothing else can provide. So that's my word today, that God is speaking to me. Hopefully it speaks to you as well. But we've got a great service in store for you that I want to tell you about. Pastor Brian Kelly is kicking off a new series called Lessons Learned from the Celts. Now, the reason we're doing a series on Celtic traditions, especially as it applies to our Christianity, is because at Penn West University here in Edinburgh, Pennsylvania, where they are hosting the Highland Games. So we're partnering with them in a way to kind of incorporate the Celtic tradition into our teaching series. So you're going to want to stay tuned for this. It's going to be very interesting. I know I have a lot to learn about Celtic traditions and how they apply to my faith. So stay tuned for that today. Also, we have all kinds of great events happening this fall at McLean Church as we are officially in a new ministry year. So much happening. Rather than me sit here and read everything off to you, I'm just going to encourage you to go to mcleanchurch.org, click on the fall button there that tells you all about the things happening. Get out your calendar and mark some dates. So many great things happening for both the kids, for families, for guys, for ladies, for young people and old. We're excited about the year ahead and we want you to be a part of it. So visit our website at mcleanchurch.org for more info on that. Also, something very exciting happening beginning this week is our life group signups will be happening. Life groups are a great opportunity for you to meet with other folks, smaller size groups, to just do life together, to talk about what God is doing in your life, to pray together, to cry together, to laugh together. It's just such an important part about our church is meeting from Monday to Saturday. After the service is over on Sunday, that's really where the rubber meets the road in our walk with Christ, when we do it with other people. So I would encourage you to explore our website, mcleanchurch.org. Check out the Life Groups page. There'll be opportunity and options there for you to plug into. I would encourage you to do that. And if you would like an online opportunity that's less of a physical commitment, we have a great opportunity that we do each week through the YouVersion Bible app. It's a simple opportunity to meet with other folks. We do a study each week using the Bible app. Like I said, this past week we did one on peace, and it just involves, a cup of coffee and a conversation with God. And you read scripture, you provide your thoughts, maybe prayer requests. Very simple, but very meaningful time together using technology and meeting virtually. So if that's something that interests you, I'd love to have you part of that group as well. You can check that page out for more information on our website. Well, we know why you really came to church today, and that is to worship. So without further ado, I'll step aside and let the worship team do what they do best in leading us today in worship. Guys, take it away.
Hello, McLeaners, and welcome. Things don't always go according to our plans, but we have a Heavenly Father who loves us, who's shining a light on a path for us, letting us lean on Him for wisdom, for discernment, helping us to grow through our mistakes, to make ourselves better. So as we lift up our voices together today, please take comfort, whatever you're going through, whatever is changing in your life right now, that there is a constant, the love of Jesus Christ, our Savior. When night has fallen, when fear is coming, still you're calling me. When faith is lost and my hope exhausted, you will be my strength. When my mind says I'm not good enough, God, you're enough for me. Yeah, I've decided I'm not giving up, 'cause you won't give up on me. You won't give up on me. Your love is holding on and it won't let go. Feel it breaking out like an echo. Your love is holding on and it won't let go, let go. I feel it breaking out like an echo, echo in my soul. Oh, oh. Soul. Oh, oh. In every season you keep repeating promises to me. Now there's no stopping what you have started until it is complete. When my mind says I'm not good enough, God, you're enough for me. Yeah, I've decided I'm not giving up, 'cause you won't give up on me. You won't give up on me. Your love is holding on and it won't let go, let go. I feel it breaking out like an echo, echo. Your love is holding on and it won't let go, let go. I feel it breaking out like an echo, echo in my soul. Oh, oh. Soul. Oh, oh. Echo in my soul. Says I'm not good enough, God, you're enough for me. Yeah, I've decided I'm not giving up, 'cause you won't give up on me. You won't give up on me. Your love is holding on and it won't let go, let go. I feel it breaking out like an echo, echo. Your love is holding on and it won't let go, let go. I feel it breaking out, breaking out. Hey, your love is holding on and it won't let go, let go. I feel it breaking out like an echo, echo. Your love is holding on and it won't let go, let go. I feel it breaking out like an echo, echo in my soul. Oh, oh.
Well, at this point in our service, I want to take an opportunity to give back through our tithes and our offerings. Listen, we couldn't do anything that we do without your partnership and monetarily. And that is such an important part of putting the online service together, serving our youth, serving our children, having technical productions, our music ministry. Everything we do at our church, as you can imagine, comes with a cost, and we could not do it without your generosity. And it's such a great opportunity for us to partner not only with you, but with God, to continue to advance our church, advance our mission, and to reach more people and eliminate more barriers to give people access to Christ. So with that being said, let me pray for our offering today as we take a moment to do that however you see fit, whether you're mailing a check to our church office, dropping one off, maybe you're doing it through our mobile app, or visiting our website at mcleanchurch.org/give. So grateful for your generosity. Let's pray together. Father God, thank you for the opportunity to partner with you. You've blessed us with resources that we can willingly give back to you and reach more people in your name. We're grateful to partner with our church, but even more so, we're grateful to have you as a partner to reach more people, to spread your word, to share the love of Jesus with others. We thank you for each person today who's giving. No matter how they're doing it, God, we know that you will use it in a very impactful way. We give thanks for our church. We give thanks for the generosity of our members. We give thanks for the opportunity to give back. Amen.
Well, welcome, McLean Church. We are moving quickly into the fall on this recorded for the weekend of September 10th, 2023. And I'll tell you, what a fall we have in store. If you haven't taken a look at our fall preaching schedule that's available to you online, please make sure you look at that and plan your schedule around that. We have got some really important and intriguing sermon series that we're going to be doing this fall. In October, we're going to be looking at the book of Habakkuk, a minor prophet in the Old Testament, one of those short, small books at the end of the Old Testament that's often overlooked, and yet Habakkuk has a really powerful and relevant message about finding hope in God when everything seems hopeless. It's a book that deals honestly with disillusion and disappointment, and yet ends with a resounding theme and note of hope. It's a series you're definitely going to want to listen to. In November, we're going to look at another minor prophet, the prophet Haggai. And Haggai, excuse me, has a lot to say to our present day. Because Haggai talks about priorities. He talks about putting first things first. This short little prophet is going to call us to think about where we're investing our time, where we're investing our energy, how we're living our life. That's Haggai in the month of November. But for the next 2 weeks, these 2 weeks in September, we are doing a series entitled Celtic Christianity. As many of you know, our local university, Penn West Edinburgh, every year sponsors something called the Highland Games, an event celebrating the history and culture primarily of Scotland. And we thought, boy, it would be fascinating to combine a couple weeks of worship around Celtic themes and around Celtic culture, and specifically looking at Celtic expressions of Christianity. Now, when we use this term Celtic, particularly as we're going to use it in this talk today, we're talking about the culture, the history, the people of the British Isles, particularly the western edge of those islands, thinking about the region of Wales, thinking about Ireland, thinking about Scotland. These areas are where Celtic Christianity is birthed and emerges. And we're going to be looking at the Christianity that emerges in these regions, specifically in the time period of about the 5th through the 10th century of the Common Era. So roughly 400 to 900 are the years that we're going to be considering when we look, as we examine the expressions of Christianity and of the church that take shape in this region during this specific period of time. And it's really important that we're doing this because we know that Christianity has multiple expressions, and we learn a lot by considering the diverse and multiple expressions of the Christian faith. So remember when you were a kid and you thought that the way your family did things was the way every family did things, right? I remember our family, like many families, opened Christmas presents on Christmas morning. That was the big deal. You got up on Christmas morning, you went downstairs. We had a particular routine where you could open your stocking before breakfast, but then you had to wait until we had breakfast all together, and then we would open our gifts. I remember how shocked and astounded I was to learn that a friend of mine's family opened gifts on Christmas Eve. They didn't have to wait until Christmas morning. They got to open gifts Christmas Eve. That was revolutionary to my thinking. And my guess is if we took a survey of our congregation, probably about half of our families would open gifts Christmas morning, half would open on Christmas Eve. There's a diversity in experience of this tradition. Within the Christian faith, we know there's lots of diversity of experience and expression. Take one simple example. We talked about baptism a few weeks ago. Some churches practice infant baptism. Other churches practice adult or believers baptism. Depending on which tradition you grew up in or were raised in, you understood your practice probably to be the way everybody did it, and then at some point in time, you realized there were differences. The diversity of Christian faith and expression of faith helps us understand the fullness of our faith. And the more we grow, the more we mature, the more we realize that there are different expressions, different understandings, different experiences of faith. We have 4 distinct gospel accounts in Jesus' life highlighting this very fact. In Christian experience, just geographically, we have lots of variation in experience of faith and practice of faith. Many of us were raised in what we would call a Western tradition or expression of Christianity. This traces its origins back to the Roman Empire and Rome as the center of papal authority. And whether you are Catholic or Protestant, if you grew up in a Western experience or expression of those two faiths, they all go back to Rome. They all go back to the Roman Empire. And yet, we know there are Eastern expressions of Christianity, particularly after the division of the church in the 11th century, but really from the beginning of Christianity's history, East and West developed along different lines, along different approaches to faith and following Christ. So in our present day, we have Eastern Orthodoxy over against Roman Catholicism or Western Protestantism. We know the Asian expression and experience of the church is unique. It's different from the Western understanding. What we've seen emerge in the African church, particularly fascinating over the past century, has brought a whole new perspective and dimension to Christianity. Certainly, Christianity in Latin America and South America has taken on its own unique experience and dimension. And we should expect all this, right? Because Jesus talked so much about the diversity of the body of Christ, that all were welcome into his family, that this gospel was for all the nations. And so we shouldn't be surprised that we have a unique expression of Christianity that grows in the western edge of the British Isles, this Celtic region. Again, think Wales, think Ireland, think Scotland. And here's what's unique about how faith develops in that particular area. We think Christianity arrives in the British Isles as early as the 2nd century. So again, think about this. Jesus lives during the beginning of the 1st century. So think about him living, roughly from 0 to about 30 of the Common Era. Within 100 years, likely his message has moved as far as from Jerusalem to the British Isles. Now, in the 4th century, when Christianity becomes the official religion of the Roman Empire, what happens is that Christianity begins to move throughout the empire as the Roman legions move throughout the empire and expand the empire. So Christianity comes to the British Isles in the 2nd century, likely. It begins to grow and mature. And as the British legions move throughout the empire and into the British Isles, they bring the Roman expression, the formalized, the official expression of Christianity into the British Isles. But here's the thing. They stop short of these Western territories. They stop largely short of Wales, of Ireland, and of Scotland. And here's what happens as the British legions move into to the British Isles, carrying with them the Roman official formalized expression of Christianity. All of a sudden in the 5th century, Rome is threatened by the Visigoths, and all the Roman legions pull back from Britain back to Rome to defend it. And we're left with this situation in the British Isles where a certain part of them have been indoctrinated, developed around, introduced to the formal expression of Christianity through the Roman government. And then we have these regions, Wales, Scotland, and Ireland, that have largely been untouched or unaffected by that Roman official expression of Christianity. They're still working with what was brought to them early on in the 2nd century. So it's this fascinating development of two expressions of Christianity side by side. In Britain proper, in England, we have the development of more formalized Roman expression of Christianity in the Celtic regions, Wales, Ireland, and Scotland. Sort of this untouched by Rome, development of Christianity. And by the way, I apologize, this whole talk is a bit nerdy in its history, but I hope it'll help us appreciate more fully some of the unique expressions and experiences of the Christian faith. Now, there are a lot of figures in Celtic Christianity that we could look at. We could talk about, for instance, St. Patrick of Ireland, who's credited with bringing the gospel to Ireland. But we're going to look at two of perhaps the most notable thinkers who influenced Celtic Christianity, notable because we have good records of what they thought and what they wrote. And the two figures we're going to look at this week and the next are, number one, Pelagius, and number two, John Scotus Erugena. And these two thinkers, these two figures, shape so much of the expression of Christian faith in this Celtic region during this period of time we're talking about. Again, think 400 to 900, 5th century to the 10th century of the Common Era. But here's the deal with both these figures, Pelagius and Erugena. They're both condemned as heretics by the church. So we're going to talk this week and next about two heretics. Now, with that in mind, understand that the church, Christianity, has always had its outliers. It's always had its people on the edge. And often these people's thinking and teaching gets dismissed, gets disregarded, gets branded as heresy, more because they're on the wrong side of history and politics in particular, than because their thinking is wrong and erroneous. And I think much of the reputation that these two thinkers, these two theologians, these two Christians have garnered has more to do with sort of being at the wrong place at the wrong time and being aligned on the wrong side of the political spectrum than it had to do with genuine problems or issues with their thoughts about Christianity. But as we talk about both of them, I'll leave you to decide what you think about them. Pelagius is an interesting character. Pelagius is born in the second half of the 4th century, so think the year roughly 350. He's born in the British Isles. We don't know exactly where, but tradition might suggest that he's born in Wales. And somewhere along the line, Pelagius encounters Christianity and he embraces it wholeheartedly and extremely seriously. Pelagius is known as an ascetic, a term used particularly in this era that we're talking about to describe people who took their faith really, really seriously. Pelagius believed that the gospel called us to live like and be like Jesus Christ. Really. And Pelagius believed that we were to live like, be like Jesus Christ in the everyday, ordinary experiences of our lives. Like we say around here all the time, in how we treat the cashier at Walmart. Now, there were other ascetics in Pelagius' day, many of them. But a lot of them, as they took this call to live like and be like Jesus so seriously, a lot of them came to the conclusion that this is impossible to do in the everyday real world. And so you know what they did? They withdrew from the world. They became hermits. They lived in isolation because they said to be like Jesus, it's impossible in this real world of everyday relationships and conflicts and challenges and trials. The only way we can be like Jesus is to withdraw. Pelagius said, no. We're to bring the reality of Jesus, the presence of Jesus, to the real world, to our real life, to our real experience. We are to be like Jesus in the everyday and in the ordinary, and Pelagius really meant it. Now, somewhere along the way, Pelagius travels from the British Isles to Rome, the center of Christian faith at this period of time. And what he finds in Rome really disturbs him. Because what Pelagius finds in Rome is he finds people who are calling themselves Christians, but who aren't living at all like Jesus. Pelagius is particularly concerned, upset by what he sees in the Roman aristocracy. Most who claim to be Christians. Christianity, again, at this time, is the official religion of the Roman Empire. If you're a good Roman, you're also a good Christian. But he sees in these people a life that doesn't reflect the values of Jesus. And Pelagius calls them out for that. And in doing so, he gets on the wrong side of some really important people. Now, Pelagius will come into conflict with a man named Augustine. And that's a term you've probably, a name you've heard before. Augustine is probably one of the most prominent theologians in the history of the Western expression of Christianity. And Augustine, he actually lives in Africa, but he is the prominent theologian of Rome. And what happens with Augustine is that Augustine becomes sort of the champion religiously of being critical of Pelagius. And Pelagius wants to talk to Augustine, so he travels to Africa, where Augustine lives, Carthage in particular. Augustine is not there at the time, so he and Pelagius never have a chance to meet face to face. And Pelagius moves on from Africa to Jerusalem, to Palestine. So he's been in Britain, he goes to Rome, he goes to Africa. Now he's over here in Jerusalem, over in Palestine. Augustine may be influenced by the political forces of the Roman Empire. Who knows? We can only conjecture. Sends word to the church in Jerusalem that, listen, you better watch out for this guy. This guy is teaching some things and saying some things, and we're going to get to what he taught and said in just a moment, that you better look out for. So the Jerusalem church calls a council and asks Pelagius to present himself and to talk about, to defend what he believes and what he teaches to the Jerusalem council. And the Jerusalem church listens to Pelagius. In fact, they do it on 2 occasions, and they say, this guy's fine. What this guy thinks, what this guy believes, it's okay. Well, Augustine gets word of this, and he seems a little miffed because he has apparently wanted the Jerusalem church to condemn Pelagius, and they haven't. So Augustine does a neat thing. He calls a council in Carthage, at which Pelagius is not present, and he represents Pelagius' teachings to the council, and guess what? The council of Carthage condemns Pelagius as a heretic. Augustine then goes to the Pope and says, Council has condemned Pelagius' teachings. You probably ought to too. So the Pope, Innocent I, condemns Pelagius as a heretic. Interestingly, again, neither Augustine nor the Pope have had any contact or encounter with Pelagius. They're just making their decisions on what they understand him to think and to teach. Innocent condemns Pelagius as a heretic, and then Innocent dies. Another pope comes to power, and the new pope revisits the case, looks at the evidence and says, there's nothing wrong with what this guy is teaching. Reverses Innocent I's decision about Pelagius, but then something significant happens. Augustine, seeing the reversal by the Pope, decides to subvert the Pope and goes to the Emperor, Honorius, convinces the Emperor that Pelagius' teaching will be disruptive to society. Because remember, Pelagius is going after the aristocracy. He's criticizing them for their lack of living out faith. And so the Emperor decides that he ought to condemn Pelagius, probably to preserve social order. The Pope then, who has reversed Innocent I's decision about Pelagius, likely sees what the Emperor has done and says, okay, if the Emperor is condemning him, we better condemn him too. So the Pope then changes his mind again, condemns Pelagius, and in 418, at a council of the church, Pelagius is officially declared a heretic. It is reaffirmed by the Council of Ephesus in 431, and from the 5th century on, Pelagius has been considered a heretic in the church, and anyone trained in formal Western theology, like I have been, is taught that Pelagius, Pelagianism, is an ancient heresy of the church that fortunately the theologian Augustine stood up against and had put down. Interestingly, there are many of Augustine's teachings that, in my mind, are much more disturbing than anything Pelagius said or did. But Augustine had the ear of the right people. He was the person in power, and is so often the case in history. His views prevailed. And until, just an aside, until the 19th century, when a lot of Pelagius' original writings were rediscovered, most of what we knew about Pelagius and his teachings, most of what we knew was what Augustine had told us. So think about that. So that's an awful long introduction. Let's talk about some of the things. Oh, one more thing to say. After Pelagius is condemned by the church in 418, what does he do? He goes back home. Rome, Palestine are not safe places for him to be, but the British Isles are safe. As remember, Rome's withdrawn from that area. The legions are gone. And back in the British Isles, and particularly in this Celtic area, Wales, Ireland, and Scotland, we have a place that's been untouched by Rome. A place that doesn't submit itself to the teaching of Augustine or the authority of the Pope. We have a place that Pelagius is safe. And he goes there, and his ideas radically impact the development of the church there. So what were some of Pelagius' ideas that had significant effect on the Celtic church and that caused so much controversy in Rome, and particularly with the theologian Augustine? Well, the first of his ideas that I'd point out is this. Pelagius understood that creation was fundamentally good, and that the goodness of creation revealed the goodness of God. Now hold on, don't jump to a lot of conclusions here. Pelagius was clear that the fall had affected creation, that sin had tainted creation. But where Augustine had begun with original sin, Pelagius began with original goodness, where the Bible begins. In the two stories of creation in the opening chapters of Genesis, the first story is structured entirely around a celebration of the goodness of creation. The structuring of this poem, this song in the opening chapter of Genesis, is this sixfold refrain: it is good, it is good, it is good. And then this crowning chorus on the seventh day: it was very good. Creation as the product of God's divine activity, as the expression of His person, as the embodiment of His Spirit, contains a fundamental goodness that reveals the nature and character of God that hasn't been completely erased by the fall or by the Augustinian concept of original sin. And it would seem that the Scriptures repeatedly affirm this. Think of Psalm 19. The heavens declare the glory of God. The skies proclaim the work of His hands. Day after day they pour forth speech. Night after night they send forth knowledge. The psalmist says there's something of the nature, the reality of God that is displayed in His creation. Romans 1, Paul builds his argument around about the guilt of humanity around the idea that nature reveals to us the character and being of God. That there is a fundamental goodness to creation which meant for Pelagius and for the Celtic Christians who followed his teaching that creation was to be taken seriously. All of creation was to be taken seriously. It wasn't just humanity that mattered to God. All of creation mattered to God, and all of creation revealed God. So some writers and thinkers have said you see a very early environmentalism emerged out of the Celtic church, where the creation order in every dimension, the plants, the animals, the rocks, the river, the moon, the sun, the stars, the sky, the earth, the ground. It was all seen as God's good work, bearing in some sense even the essence and spirit of God as His creation. It was to be stewarded well. It was to be learned from. It was a revelation to humanity of the goodness of God. And yes, sin was present in the creation. Yes, the fall affected the creation order. But it didn't totally destroy it. And it didn't give people of faith permission to abandon it. Creation was good, and God was revealed in creation's goodness. This led to the second and maybe the most most central idea to Pelagius' thinking and the criticisms that surrounded him. Pelagius believed that there was a fundamental goodness in humanity as well. That there was a fundamental goodness in people because people were created in the image of God. Again, where Augustine started with original sin, which led to him to develop this idea of total depravity. Pelagius said, no, humanity begins good, and then humanity chooses to fall, chooses to walk away from God. And Pelagius was clear that we all make that choice. Pelagius was clear that sin was a reality and that our propensity was to sin, but that sin did not completely remove or cover over the goodness endowed in us through our creation in God's image. And what this meant for Pelagius and for the Celtic church was that all people had value. All people had potential. There was the ability for good in all because all were image bearers of God. Let me tell you practically how this got expressed in Pelagius' own activity and in the Celtic church. Pelagius, again, we're talking the 4th century here. Pelagius had the audacity to think that women should be taught to read so that they could read the Scriptures, because Pelagius believed that women were good because all people bore the image of God. Now this leads to Pelagius' third point, and the point that really gets him in trouble. Pelagius believed that because we are created in the image of God and that because we have a fundamental goodness to us, guess what? We are responsible before God to do good. We are responsible before God to do good. See, here's the deal. Whatever you think about original sin and total depravity, we're not going to get into parsing all that today or probably any day. But the reality is original sin and total depravity are great excuses for not doing the right thing. Because if you understand yourself as totally evil, totally bad apart from God's grace, then it's almost expected that there'll be lots of times that you won't do right. Pelagius said, you know what, that might be too easy of a pass. We bear the image of God, so we have the ability to choose to do right in the ordinary, everyday experiences of our lives, in how we treat the cashier at Walmart. And how this influenced the Celtic church was that in the Celtic church, a very rigid discipline emerged. People were expected to toe the line in ways that we probably don't have that expectation in our present Western experience of Christianity. People who named the name of Christ were really expected to live in the ordinary everyday like Christ called them to live, because Pelagius said, we have the ability to do that. We bear the image of God. Now, what happened with these ideas is that they led Pelagius to be accused of saying that we really have no need for God. If creation is good, if humanity is fundamentally good, if we have the ability to choose what is right, then we can save ourselves. We don't need God. We don't need Jesus. Pelagius said nothing of the sort. In fact, he clearly affirmed that we absolutely needed God's grace, that we absolutely had a propensity to sin because of the fall, that we absolutely needed the forgiving work of Christ made possible by the cross. Pelagius just argued that we have a part in the equation too, that we have a role to play as well. And as I mentioned, before the 19th century, really all we knew of Pelagius is what Augustine had told us about him. And Obviously, Augustine framed him as quite an enemy of the church. Starting in the 19th century and into the present day, the original writings of Pelagius have been discovered and are being translated. And what we're seeing is a person who deeply affirmed the need for God's salvation in Jesus Christ. Pelagius just wasn't willing to let humanity off the hook for our responsibility in living into the goodness placed in us by God through his creative work of bringing us to be. I don't know what you think about Pelagius or Augustine or any theologian for that matter. I'll leave it to you to decide whether you think Pelagius's ideas had validity or merit. Two books that I might recommend if you want to learn more about this thinker. John Philip Newell, who's done a lot of writing in Celtic Christianity, wrote a number of years ago a book called The Heartbeat of God. Very interesting reading, not just on Pelagius, but on Celtic Christianity. That's John Philip Newell, The Heartbeat of God. A second author that unfortunately I can't remember her last name right now, but the title of the book is Rethinking Pelagianism, and she has brought to bear a lot of the more recent discoveries of Pelagius's writings in trying to understand this figure. Here's what I want to leave you with. Certainly, the influence of Pelagius on the Celtic church, particularly around stewarding well and appreciating creation, respect for all people because all people bear the image of God, and personal responsibility to live like Jesus called us to live. Those are three things that the present day Western church would probably do well to give some thought and consideration to. But the final thing I want us to think about is the history of people like Pelagius and Augustine and the conflicts that existed between thinkers in the church over the centuries. They tell us this: be very careful about following any one person or any one movement or thinking that any one person, teacher, or group of people have it all figured out. God is far too big and vast and beyond us for any one thinker, preacher, theologian, any particular movement, denomination, or church to claim that they've got him all figured out, that they understand him completely. Be very wary of throwing all your eggs into one particular basket. God is much too big and broad for any of our human baskets to contain him. Instead, learn from the rich diversity of Christian history, experience, and expression as we live more fully in to following Christ, who is the one person we can throw ourselves all in with. Well, that's all we've got to say for Pelagius today. Next week, we'll talk about John Scotus Erigena and a lot to think about in terms of what this other Celtic thinker and Christian had to say and had to write.
Hey, well, thanks for joining us today at McLean Church Online. What a great service, man. I learned so much about the Celts I never knew, and I'm excited for week 2. Next week, make sure you make plans to be with us as Pastor Brian continues this series on Celtic Christianity. Of course, go to our website to check out all of our events. As I mentioned, be on the lookout for life group signups, and make plans to be with us here again next week at McLean Church Online. We'll see you then.